Hey everybody, welcome to our video on understanding the role of emotion in interpersonal communication. Our goals for these videos are to first define emotion, which is what we're going to do in this first video, explain primary and secondary emotions, and then understand what we call affective presence. So let's start with a really simple question. Right now, I want you to just take a second and think about how you feel. In this moment, pause the video and write down some adjectives that describe your emotional state. These could include happy, anxious, excited, overwhelmed. Pick whatever adjectives you think best. Pause the video. Great. Now that you're back, I want you to think about those words you just wrote down. What is an emotion? How did you know that those specific words related to your emotional state? We define emotion as the physiological, behavioral, or communicative reactions to stimuli that are cognitively processed and experienced. That's a pretty heavy definition. Essentially, what we're saying is that emotions cause us to have a certain feeling, and they lead to physiological changes. So some of those changes include an increased heart rate. And as a person who teaches public speaking, I can tell you that we talk about this idea of an increased heart rate a lot when we talk about anxiety, and particularly speech anxiety. You might also feel a tense stomach, a chill, a sweating, dilated pupils. So our body reacts to this emotional feeling. And these reactions are unconscious. We don't have a lot of control over them. Now, it's important to understand that emotions are internally experienced. They're intrapersonal, if we can go back and look at that word from our first week. That means they may not be noticeable by other people without our nonverbal or verbal cues. So if you say, I feel fine, somebody could still potentially tell that you weren't feeling very well based on your nonverbal cues. Remember that nonverbal cues can often be things that we just can't control. So even though we think we're expressing a certain positive emotion, our face may belie a negative emotion. So how do we behave when we have a certain emotional reaction? Well, we can change our behavior either voluntarily. For example, if you get really excited about something, you might voluntarily smile, jump up and down, get really excited. But you might also involuntarily be sending verbal and nonverbal cues to others. And we've talked about that in class in terms of how nonverbal behavior is often involuntary. And we think that we're controlling it, but we're not. And again, that's why acting is such a very difficult thing for people to do, because you have to be able to control involuntary messages about how you feel. So when does this all start? Well, research shows us that at about 5 months, babies can recognize emotions like happy, sad, and angry. By 18 months, they start using emotions to make inferences about others. So they can tell when you're angry, they can tell when you're happy, and they react to that. By 24 months, they can start talking about emotions, applying specific words and symbols to how they feel and how you feel. And by 36 months, or 3 years, they recognize, label, and use emotions in very specific situations. They know what will make mom and dad angry. They know what makes another baby happy. So this all starts very, very early. Now, I want you to pause, consider going over to the discussion board, and start participating in discussion 1. We're going to move on to our next video to learn about primary and secondary emotions. So when you're ready, after you finish the first discussion, feel free to come back in and go into the next video.